I shouldn't have stayed. That's the first thought that comes to me now. But when she asked, softly, almost carelessly, "Stay a little longer. I'm not done yet," I couldn't make myself walk away. It started simple. She needed help with a loose window latch. Her nephew, me, just happened to be visiting for the weekend, and when she caught me fiddling with the lock on my own suitcase, she asked if I knew how to fix things. I said I could try. Her house felt quiet in the kind of way that makes you notice every sound. The drip of the faucet, the hum of the fridge, my own footsteps on the wooden floor. She hovered in the doorway while I wrestled with the stubborn metal hinge, her arms folded, her head tilted just enough that I could feel her eyes lingering longer than they needed to. "You're patient," she said after a while. I smirked without looking back. "Or just stubborn." There was a pause. The kind of pause that isn't silence exactly, it's weight. Like something filling the space between us that neither of us wanted to name. When I finally got the latch to snap back into place, I turned to tell her it was done. And that's when I noticed. She was closer than before. Not too close. Just enough that I caught the faint trace of her perfume. Something warm, steady, not sweet like the girls my age wore. It wrapped around me in a way I wasn't prepared for. "See," I said, trying to shake it off. "Good as new." Her lips curved, slow. "You make it look easy." I told myself not to overthink it, but the way she held my gaze made it impossible. It wasn't deliberate, maybe not even conscious, but she didn't look away as quickly as she should have. I felt it then, that spark people pretend they don't feel when they shouldn't. To cover it, I asked if there was anything else broken around the house. She laughed lightly, but there was an edge to it, like she knew exactly what I was doing. "There's always something," she said. "But you don't have to." She stopped, her voice catching slightly before smoothing over. "You've already done enough. I should have left then." That would have been the safe, polite end to the moment. But instead, I found myself lingering in her kitchen, asking about the photos on her fridge, listening to stories about places she had traveled when she was younger. Her voice grew softer as the afternoon light shifted through the curtains, turning the room gold. I don't know how long we talked. Long enough for the tea she made us to go cold. Long enough for me to forget the time until the sky outside was dimming. Then it happened. I reached for my cup at the same time she reached for hers, and the back of my hand brushed against her fingers. Neither of us pulled away. Not immediately. Her eyes flicked up to mine, steady, searching, and for a second, the air felt charged, too fragile to breathe in. That's when she said it low, almost to herself but meant for me. "Stay a little longer. I'm not done yet." I froze, cup halfway to my lips, heart slamming in my chest. Because it wasn't about the tea anymore. It wasn't about broken latches or stories from her past. Something else had just begun. I knew I should have left when the window was fixed. That was the clear exit. But her words, "Stay a little longer," were already carving themselves into me, repeating like a song I couldn't turn off. The danger wasn't just in the way she said it. It was in who she was. My aunt, yes, but not in the way most people think. Not blood. Not family by anything but circumstance. She'd married into my mother's side years ago, and then, after her divorce, she stayed part of the family in that unspoken way people sometimes do. She was older, wiser, supposed to be untouchable. That's what made the moment feel like standing too close to a fire. I sat back down at her kitchen table, pretending it was casual, but my chest was tight. She poured fresh tea, though neither of us touched it. The silence stretched, filled with things neither of us dared to say. "You've changed," she said finally, her tone soft, almost hesitant. "Changed how?" I asked, trying not to sound too eager. Her eyes traced over me like she was cataloging things I couldn't see in myself. More settled. Not the restless boy I remember. I laughed awkwardly, rubbing the back of my neck. "I don't feel very settled." That made her smile, but there was sadness tucked into it. She looked away, fingertips circling the rim of her cup. For a second, I caught something raw in her expression. Loneliness maybe, or regret. She didn't hide it quickly enough, and I wondered how often she carried that look when no one was around to notice. The thought unsettled me more than it should have. I wanted to ask, "Are you okay?" But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said the safer thing. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" "Too long," she murmured. And then she looked at me again. Really looked, and I felt something shift inside me. She wasn't seeing me as a boy anymore. Or maybe she was just letting me see her, without the walls, without the polished mask she usually wore. My thoughts tangled. I noticed ridiculous things. The way one strand of hair kept falling against her cheek no matter how often she pushed it back. The faint smudge of ink on her fingers from the letters she'd been sorting earlier. The way her blouse fit a little too loosely, like it belonged to another version of her she no longer was. I shouldn't have been noticing any of it. Not like this. But I couldn't stop. She shifted in her chair, leaning just slightly closer. My pulse jumped. "You don't have to rush off," she said quietly. "It's late. And it's been nice having someone to talk to." Her hand reached across the table, brushing against mine as if by accident. But her touch lingered longer than it should have. My skin burned where her fingers grazed. I opened my mouth, words pressing at the edge. Something reckless. Something I wasn't supposed to say. And then I shut it again, swallowing hard, as the silence thickened around us. Something was unraveling. Her fingers hadn't left mine. Not fully. It could have been dismissed as nothing. Just a touch between family, a slip of closeness, but we both knew it wasn't. I pulled back just slightly, enough to give us both an out. She let me. But the look she gave me in that instant felt like a question neither of us dared voice. I tried to steady myself by standing, carrying my untouched tea to the sink. "I should probably get going," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. Her chair scraped back as she rose, following me. "It's late," she said softly. "Driving now wouldn't be safe." It was a reasonable excuse. Too reasonable. And it left me cornered. I turned, and suddenly she was there, close enough that the faint warmth of her body seemed to reach me. Her eyes, dark, steady, unreadable, held mine in a way that made breathing feel like work. "I didn't mean to keep you," she added, softer now. It's been a long time since I've had someone here. Someone who listens." The crack in her voice startled me more than her nearness. Vulnerability, unguarded. I saw her then, not as my aunt, not as the composed woman I'd grown up respecting, but as a person, alone, carrying more silence than anyone should. And I wanted to answer it. I wanted to reach for her. My hand twitched at my side, but before I could act, her phone buzzed on the counter. Loud, jarring. She flinched, breaking the moment. The sound went on too long before she silenced it. Face unreadable. I caught only a glimpse of the screen. A man's name. She shoved it face down, the faintest tremor in her hand. I shouldn't have asked. But the words slipped out. "Was that someone important?" Her laugh was short, brittle. "Not anymore." The silence after carried more weight than the buzzing phone had. I tried to retreat into safer ground. I stepped back, shoving my hands into my pockets, saying, "You don't have to explain." But she took a step closer, as if she wouldn't let me pull away that easily. "I don't explain myself to many people," she whispered. "Only the ones I trust." My chest tightened. I should have left it there. Let the moment pass, chalk it up to late-night loneliness and the haze of memory. But my resolve was cracking, because the truth was, I didn't want to leave. I wanted to be the one she trusted, the one who eased that quiet ache she carried in her eyes. Her hand brushed my arm then, just a small, deliberate sweep of her fingers down to my wrist. It froze me. My breath caught, and I couldn't tell anymore if she was testing me, or if we'd both already stepped too far into dangerous ground. Her voice broke the silence, low, barely more than a breath. Stay. Her single word hung between us, stay. It shouldn't have mattered. It was simple, harmless on the surface. But the way she said it, the way her fingers still rested against my wrist, made it feel like the air had thickened around us. I swallowed hard. You don't know what you're asking. Her lips pressed together, then parted again. Maybe I do. That hit deeper than I wanted it to. My chest felt tight, my pulse uneven. I stepped back, but she followed, not with her body, just with her eyes, pulling me closer even as I tried to escape. This isn't... I started, but the words fell apart. Isn't what? She asked. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed her. Something flickered there, fear, want, maybe both. I dragged a hand through my hair, trying to think, to find a safe place to land. But there wasn't one. Not anymore. You're making this harder, I muttered. Her laugh was soft, humorless. You think this is easy for me? The sharpness in her tone cut me open. She was right. She wasn't some temptress playing games. She was standing in the same fire I was, just as scared, just as torn. I looked at her then, really looked. The tired lines around her eyes, the way her blouse clung just slightly where she hadn't noticed, the way her hand trembled when she crossed her arms as if to steady herself. I don't want to ruin this, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Her gaze softened, almost breaking. You couldn't ruin it. Not more than life already has. The words slipped out of her like something she hadn't meant to reveal. Her eyes glistened for a second before she looked away, blinking fast. I froze. That was the first crack of pure honesty between us, and it landed like a blow. She turned toward the counter, gripping its edge like she needed something solid to hold on to. I've been alone a long time, she said quietly. Too long. And tonight, for a moment, I forgot what that felt like. My throat tightened. Her voice, low and trembling, cut through the silence. So what happens if we stop pretending? The question hung there, heavy, dangerous, impossible to ignore. Couldn't breathe. I couldn't answer. Not yet. Her words still echoed in me, so what happens if we stop pretending? When the moment broke in a way I didn't expect. Because instead of reaching for me, instead of pushing the line we both felt burning, she stepped back. Her eyes shifted, not with rejection, but with something else. A heaviness I didn't understand. You remind me of him, she said quietly. I blinked. Who? Her gaze drifted past me, toward the photographs pinned on her fridge. Family dinners, blurry vacations, faces I half recognized. Her hand lifted, almost unconsciously, touching one photo in particular. A younger version of her, standing beside a man I hadn't thought about in years. My brother, she whispered. Took me a second too long to realize. My father. My stomach flipped. You mean? She cut me off, shaking her head, eyes clouded. Not in the obvious way. It's the little things. The way you stand. The way you don't say what you're really thinking until it's almost too late. She gave a strained laugh. It's unfair, isn't it? To look at you and see pieces of someone I lost. I froze, torn between the heat of what had just almost happened and the cold shock of her confession. She wasn't just looking at me. She was seeing him, my father, her brother-in-law, the one who died before I was old enough to really remember him. The fire between us suddenly felt more dangerous, more complicated. I stepped closer, my voice low. Then maybe that's why this feels... I stopped, catching myself. Too much truth was pressing at the edge of my tongue. Her eyes snapped to mine. Don't say it. The command was sharp, but her voice broke at the end. She looked like she was fighting herself as much as me. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. And then, as if the universe wanted to test just how far this could bend, her front door rattled. A knock. Firm, unexpected. We both jumped. Her body stiffened, panic flickering in her eyes. She didn't move at first, and the knock came again, louder. Are you expecting someone? I asked. She shook her head quickly. No. No one. The tension shifted. Less about us now, more about the world threatening to intrude. She pressed a finger to her lips, signaling me to stay quiet, as if whoever was outside might hear even the sound of our breathing. The knock turned into a voice. A man's voice, calm, too familiar for comfort. "Clara? I know you're in there. Can we talk?" Her face drained of color. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Not now." I didn't recognize the name, but the way her hand gripped the counter, the way her shoulders trembled, told me everything. Whoever he was, he mattered. And for the first time tonight, I wasn't sure if she wanted me to stay or to disappear before the line we almost crossed got dragged into the open. The silence between us roared louder than the knocking. The man's voice outside pressed against the walls of her house like a storm trying to break in. "Clara," he called again, firmer this time. "Please, just 5 minutes." She didn't move, didn't breathe. I could see her jaw tighten, her hand white-knuckling the edge of the counter. Whoever he was, he carried history with her, and wait. Finally, the knocking stopped. Silence filled in, heavy and uneasy. Only then did she let go of the counter, pressing her palm flat against it as if her body needed the support. "I should go," I said quietly. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but they felt like the right thing. Her eyes lifted to mine, sharp, wounded, searching. "Is that what you want?" The question hit like a blade. Because no, it wasn't what I wanted. Every part of me was still burning from the way her hand had brushed mine, from the way she'd whispered stay, from the way she'd almost let herself break open in front of me. But I also knew what I saw in her eyes just now: fear, conflict, regret layered on regret. "I don't know what I want," I admitted, voice rough. "Except not to pretend anymore." Her lips parted, trembling as if words were trying to form and dying before they reached the air. Then she stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint shimmer in her eyes. "You make me feel—" She stopped, biting the inside of her cheek. A shaky breath escaped. "Alive and guilty at the same time." It was the truest thing either of us had said all night. I swallowed hard, my throat aching. "Then maybe it's real." Her laugh cracked, not with humor but pain. "Real doesn't mean right." We stood there, inches apart, drowning in the things we couldn't say. My chest hurt from holding it in, from the weight of the moment pressing down, from the knowledge that if I stepped back now, I might never feel this close to her again. So I did the only thing I could. I reached out, slowly, careful, until my hand covered hers where it still rested against the counter. She didn't pull away. Her fingers curled, almost imperceptibly, into mine. "Tell me to leave," I whispered, "and I'll go." Her eyes locked onto mine, glassy with something between defiance and surrender. Her lips parted. No sound came. Instead, she shook her head. Once, barely, but enough. That was it. The confession neither of us had words for. I leaned in, just enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath against my face, the trembling of her hand under mine. And then we stopped, both of us frozen in that fragile space between choice and consequence. The silence was louder than any kiss could have been. We never kissed. Not that night. Not with the weight of everything pressing down around us. The knock on her door still echoing. The ghost of my father's name hanging between us, the unspoken truths flooding the silence. But we didn't need to. Her hand stayed in mine, trembling at first, then steadying. I could feel the shift in her, like she was finally allowing herself to hold on to something, even if only for that fragile moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, stripped of every mask she had worn until now. "I don't want to be lonely anymore." It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a promise of forever. But it was the most honest thing she could give me. And for me, that was enough. Because I realized then that what I wanted wasn't some perfect, forbidden fantasy. It wasn't about crossing a line or claiming something reckless. What I wanted was her. Her laughter in a quiet kitchen, her stories spilling out like loose threads, the way she looked at me as if I wasn't invisible anymore. I squeezed her hand gently. Then don't be. The words hung there between us, a promise and a risk. She let out a shaky breath, half a laugh, half a sob, and for the first time all night, I saw something lift from her shoulders. The man outside never came back. The silence of the house held us until the early hours, when we finally drifted into quieter conversation. About her past, about the future she never thought she'd still have, about the ache of being seen and not judged. By the time I left, the sky was pale with morning. We didn't need to say what came next. We both knew we had crossed into something new, something fragile, but alive. That night changed everything. Not because we gave in to temptation, but because we stopped lying to ourselves. She wasn't just my aunt by marriage anymore. She was a woman who had been hiding behind regret and silence. And I was the one who stumbled into the quiet long enough to hear her. And I wasn't just the restless young man she remembered anymore. I was someone willing to see her not as a figure of the past, but as someone who still mattered here now. Sometimes the bravest thing two people can do isn't breaking the rules. It's telling the truth about what they feel, even when it scares them. And in that fragile truth, we found each other.